Ang aking ang aking topic ngayon ay tungkol sa plastic. Kaya tinawag namin siyang Buti pa ang plastic, my forever. Kasi magva-Valentine's na, no? At pero parang ang bitter po lahat naman tayo pwedeng may forever. Anyway, yan ang ating pag-uusapan ngayon, plastic and waste management in general. But ayaw umandar. So, sabi nga, no, at this point in time daw, we touch plastic more than we touch our loved ones. So, totoo ba ito sa tingin nyo? So, halimbawa, tanungin ko kayo, ano ang huli nyong hinawakan bago kayo mag-attend nito or habang nag-a-attend kayo nito? Anong hinahawakan nyo? So, pwede nyo isulat sa chat, ano ang bagay na huli nyong hinawakan or hinahawakan. Okay, may sumagot. Okay. So talagang totoo, no, na lahat tayo, kumbaga siguro sa 24 hours, halos buong 24 hours yata may hawak tayong plastic kasi yung iba natutulog hawak ang cellphone. No? Kaya talagang ubiquitous ang plastic. Siguro kung nagla-laptop kayo ngayon, plastic din yan. So maraming produkto, no? Napaka-important material niya na makikita sa maraming produkto. Marami kasi itong magandang properties, no? Maraming magandang characteristics katulad ng durable siya, no? Kaya makikita natin ginagamit siya sa construction, sa ginagamit as pipes, no? Protection sa mga kable. Madali din siyang i-install and maintain, no? Pwede siyang mahati, ikukumpuni lang natin. Hygienic, kaya niya kasing kaya niya ma-insulate, hindi siya papasukin ng moisture. Siyempre, hindi siya papasukin ng microorganisms. Actually, napakalaki ng nagawa ng plastic in terms of public health, no? So ngayon, habang sa pandemya, yun ang nagpo-protect din sa atin, no? Para hindi tayo magkaroon hindi natin malanghap ang virus. So in the medical field, ang dami niyang gamit, in packaging, sa mga pagkain, lalo, no, humahaba ang buhay ng ating mga pagkain kung properly packaged. Sustainable, innovative, no, it's malleable, kung anong gusto mong shape ang makuha, magagawa ito ng plastic. It's a good insulator, and minsan, kadalasan, mas mura siya dahil it's mass-produced. Dahil magaan siya, yun din ang malaki niyang advantage. Magaan at madaling i-transport. Yan ang mga positive. Ngayon, dahil sa positive na characteristics noon, dahil may negative naman siya implications, no? Napakatagal ng buhay ng plastic. So yung depende sa klase ng plastic, no? Siguro yung pinakamabilis yung mga plastic bag, pwedeng 20 years tumagal. Pero let's say yung plastic cup, no? Pwedeng 450 years. Yung mga PET bottles, no? Yung pa-contest kanina ni Doc Andy, mga 450 years yan. Ang sabi nga nila, lahat na plastic na nagawa mula nung naimbento ang plastic, nandito pa, nasa mundo pa. So hindi pa nagde-degrade, no? Mga 500 years. So marami rin siyang negative impacts, lalo na pag hindi siya natapon ng maayos, no? Kunwari makarating sa karagatan. Saan ba natin ginagamit ang plastic? So makikita natin dito karamihan, tayo nasa civil engineering tayo, nasa malaki ang gamit niya sa building and construction. So ito out of so each symbol represents 1 million tons, no, as of 2017 na data. Sa textile, no, sa ating mga damit, kung hindi siya cotton, marami sa ating textiles. Pero karamihan nasa packaging. Okay, yung pangbalot natin lalo na ng pagkain. Gaano ba katagal ginagamit ang plastic? So yung packaging napakabilis, no, half a year. Tapos ang pinakamatagal na useful life yung for building and construction na tumatagal ng 35 years. So makikita din natin napakabilis ng buhay sa packaging, kaya napakarami din doon ng pinoproduce na plastic para sa packaging. Kumbaga halos single-use plastic siya, no? Pagka yung pinaglagyan ng candy mo or ng chichirya mo, pagkagamit mo tapos na, itatapon na, no? Wala nang gamit. Kaya we have to produce more of those. Ngayon, ang plastic ay iba't ibang klase. So yung mga umiinom sa inyo dyan, kung may makikita kayong plastic na malapit sa inyo, tingnan nyo sa bottom, no? Kung etong mga simbolo, yung 1 to 7, yan ay type ng plastic resin. Yan ay guide sa mga magre-recycle, no? Para pag i-recycle siya, dapat sama-sama, depende sa kung anong plastic. At hindi lahat sa kanila na re-recycle sa ngayon. Tapos, ito ay international standards, no? Yung 1 to 7. So, pero sa atin, kung locally produced na plastic packaging, hindi pa tayo ganon ka stricto. Actually, wala pa tayong standards na ganon. So like ako, tiningnan ko, meron akong tissue paper dito, wala naman siyang nakalagay. Pero kung tumingin kayo ng multinational, I'm sure yung PET bottles, no? Makikita niyo yung number 1 na symbol. Yun ang ibig sabihin nun. So among all of these plastic types, ang pinakamadami yung others, yung miscellaneous plastics, kunwari mga laruan, CD, DVD, siguro mga bata pa kayo, no? Hindi ko alam kung nakakita na kayo ng CD case. Pero dun sa mga mas lagi nating ginagamit, marami yung polypropylene. Ito usually yung for food packaging. Marami sa mga take-out food dito linalagay. Marami din for high-density polyethylene. Ito yung mas matigas na plastic. In some, yung mga shampoo na malalaki, yung rigid, no? We say rigid plastics, ginagamit din sa pipes. And then, yung low-density polyethylene naman, ito yung mga grocery bag, labo bag, yung pag nag-grocery kayo, yung lalagyan ng isda, yung manipis na manipis, cling bags, cling wrap. Ngayon pong online purchases, tumaas, no, ang online purchases ngayong pandemic, napakadaming LDPE na napoproduce dyan, na ginagamit. And then of course yung PET, no, yung nakita nating example kanina, usually ginagamit sa beverage, sa pag-inom, sa packaging din. Also sa damit, no, ang PET. So ano ba ang kalagayan sa Pilipinas? Ito po ay pag-aaral na ginawa namin noong 2020 pero based sa data ng 2019. Ito yung estimated on a national level, saan ba napupunta ang ating plastic na kino-consume, no? So we estimate na may mga 2.1 million tons of plastic tayo na ginagamit. Out of this, 9% lang ang nare-recycle. Yung nababalik, no? Nababalik sa production at nare-recycle sa loob ng bansa. Kasi meron namang nalilikom tayo, na siguro na pepelletize, and then ini-export. Tapos, ang malungkot dyan, no, 35% ng plastic ay leaked out to the open environment. So mga 1/3 dinidispose sa tambakan ng basura. So at maliit na bahagi nare-recover sa refuse-derived fuel, sinusunog sa mga cement kilns. So yun ang kalagayan. At so dahil dyan, yan din ang mag-e-explain kanina yung pinakita ni Doc Andy sa ating introduction, no, na tayo noong 2015 tayo ang 3rd largest contributor of plastics to oceans, no, next to China, Indonesia, then tayo na yung pangatlo. And then mas may recent study na linabas noong 2021 na pinakita yung mga ilog na naglalabas ng plastic sa karagatan, at among those rivers, actually 80% of those rivers, kumbaga lahat ng plastics are just coming from 80% of the rivers are in Asia, and 10 of those, sa top 10, 7, lagi ko nalilimutan kung 6 at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of this nasa Pilipinas. No, and Pasig River ang nangunguna. So tayo ang may pinaka matataas na contribution, ang ating mga ilog ang may pinakamataas na contribution sa plastic na napupunta sa karagatan. So isipin natin, pag nasa dagat na, napakahirap niya ng kunin, no? So kung titingnan pa natin yung detalye nung pinakita ko kanina, no, kung meron lang for some details, I'll just show you na ito yung nakokonsumo nating 2.1 million tons. A certain portion is stored, no, hindi pa natin tinatapon, mostly mga building materials, mga fixtures. Pero kung makikita natin, so yung estimate namin dito, yung collection kasi ng basura ay mababa, no? Ang estimate ay 40% lamang. And out of this, so yun lang yung nakokolekta, karamihan napupunta lang sa tambakan ng basura. Maliit lang, out of those collected, maliit lang yung napupuntang nare-recover na recyclables, no? At ito na yung uncollected waste. So ito yung basis nung yung summary kanina na 35% is being leaked to the environment. Doon naman sa nare-recycle, ang nare-recycle lamang ay 3, no? Mostly, even on a global scale, ito rin talaga. PET, yung mga iniinuman natin ng tubig. I think yung sa labas, no, ang common term sa kanya, lalo na sa nangangalakal, ang tawag nila mineral, no, for mineral water. Rigid HDPE, ito na yung pinaglalagyan natin ng Clorox, no, yung usually malalaking packs, shampoo, and then PP, polypropylene, take-out food, no, so pinakamalaki. Ito yung nare-recycle natin out of those, kunwari lahat na PET na ilabas sa merkado, 24% lang nare-recycle. So, yung, sorry, parang may animation ng aking ano. So, ang problema talaga, ang problematic ng mga plastic ay yung single-use plastics, katulad ng mga sandobag, katulad ng mga sachet, halos hindi talaga siya nakokolekta, no, at hindi siya nare-recycle. So yan ang problematic. Siguro narinig niyo na, no, may mga bills na nakahain ngayon sa Senado at sa Kongreso regarding banning or phasing out of single-use plastics. For example, straw, no? Straw ay single-use plastic, buntings, no, yung mga ginagamit sa pag nagse-celebrate tayo. And so bakit ba ganito ang kalagayan? So tingnan natin ang kalagayan sa solid waste management, no? Yung collection efficiency natin sa bansa ay 30 to 99%. Yung matataas lang na collection coverage, meaning yung nararating ng basurero, yung mga nasa city lang, like Metro Manila, no, mga highly urbanized areas. The rest of the, kung hindi naman highly urbanized, napakababa ng collection efficiency. Tapos yung material recovery facilities, bagamat required ito sa ating batas, no, sa RA 9003, na dapat lahat na barangay may MRF, mga 33% lang ang meron or may access, no, kasi pwede naman mag-share sa ibang barangay. So malaki ang kakulangan. So dito pa lang, no, sa infrastructure, kasi dito sana gagawin ang segregation ng basura. So kung kulang tayo dito, talagang mahirap masugpo yung problema, no? And then in terms of disposal naman, yung available landfills, konting-konti pa lang din, 11%, no? Ang available na para sa buong bansa. Now, isang serious problem ng plastic pollution ay yung pagkakaroon ng microplastics, no? Pag tinapon natin siya sa environment, in time ito ay magiging microplastics, no? Through the action of pwedeng mechanical abrasion, pwedeng UV radiation, and then yung meron din pala tayong tinatawag na primary microplastics, yung produce siya na maliit na talaga, no? Yung lahat na plastic na 5 millimeters or less, yun ang tinatawag na microplastics. Tapos meron tayong plastics na mga linalagay, let's say sa facial wash, sa toothpaste, no? Kasi gusto natin yung magaspang. So yun ay pwede rin mapunta, yun din ay considered microplastics at pwede rin, it can end up also in bodies of water. Okay, so pag nasa tubig na siya, napapagkamalan siyang pagkain ng mga isda, no? Even nakukuha din siya ng seashells, and pwede siyang, that's how it would end up in our food chain, no? Eventually aakyat siya sa food chain, pwedeng mapunta sa mga tao. Yan, ito yung example, no, na kunwari mga mussels, mga tahong, oysters, no, yung bivalves, pwede niyang makuha yung microplastics. Okay? So wala pang malalimang pag-aaral kung ano ang epekto niya sa tao, sa health. Ginagawa pa lang ngayon, no, hindi pa established. So may ginawa rin kaming pag-aaral tungkol sa microplastic sa Manila Bay. Kinuha namin nag-sampling kami sa several mouths ng rivers leading to Manila Bay, at ito ang nakita naming resulta na, so yung pinakamataas kunwari sa May Kawayan River, so dalawa yung sampling points namin, yung sa ibabaw lang na tubig at yung sa ilalim, no, yung nakasama na sa sediments na plastics. So merong, kung na pinakamarami sa May Kawayan, 50,000 to 100,000 particles, no? So count ito per cubic meter of the water. Meron ding may kaunti kaming sampling points sa Laguna de Bay. So ito yung konti pa lang ang pag-aaral natin, and sana madagdagan, no, yung mga ganitong data. So ano ba ang mga factors leading to plastic pollution? So ito na yung pinakita ko kanina. Una, low waste collection rates. So siguro kung titingnan natin ang solution, titingnan natin yung buong value chain, no? Mula sa downstream, so ito yung mga problema sa infrastructure, no, yung nandiyan na yung basura, anong ginagawa sa kanya, at upstream din. So umpisahan ko from down to up. factors pala ito sa mamaya sa solutions. Anyway, we have low waste collection rates. Tapos yung ating dump sites na hindi maayos ang pagka-design, no? Nag-leak siya lalo na kung malapit siya sa isang body of water, madaling makarating doon ang plastic. And very low recycling rates for plastics katulad nung pinakita ko. Maraming rason para dahil kung bakit recycling rates are low. Halos walang recycling sa flexible plastics, yung sinabi kong malambot na plastic. Ayan na po ang aking alarm, so bibilis-bilis ako na lang. That's 20 minutes. And then, yung untreated sewage, no? So dito sa pag-aaral din namin, nakita natin na maraming microplastic sa untreated sewage, karamihan galing sa paglalaba. No, habang naglalaba tayo, dahil maraming plastic ang damit natin, may nare-release na microplastics, microfibers. And then, increasing ang consumption natin ng plastic, especially sachets, no? Sa mahihirap na bansa, very attractive ang sachet. Ang pera lang kasi ng tao, ang kaya lang yung pang-araw-araw na gagamitin, no? Bibili ng isang sachet ng suka, mantika, no, even shampoo. At yan nga, e-commerce, lalo na ngayong pandemic, ang daming online purchases, ang daming delivery, yung purchases lahat nakabalot sa bubble wrap. So yung ano ba yung solution? We need to shift from linear to circular economy. Meaning yung linear economy kasi yung traditional model natin is we extract the material, manufacture natin, i-consume natin, no? We consume and then itapon natin. But we have to remember, finite ang resources ng mundo, no? Dadating ang panahon na uubos na ang materials at finite ang space para sa pagtapon ng basura. Dadating ang panahon wala nang pagtatapunan ng basura. So dapat makaisip tayo ng paraan kung saan ang basura ay magiging resource ulit, no? Babalik siya sa loop ng manufacturing. So ito siguro yung dito yung malaking change, no, from yung linear economy model to circular economy. Yung anong tingin natin sa gumagamit ng material, no? Instead of being a consumer, tayo ay user lamang. So kumbaga kasi kung consume ang ang mindset mo, itatapon ko ito. Pero kung user ka lang, may paggagamitan pa siya ulit, no? Ang unang mga example ng circular models ay sa mga electronics, no, sa appliances. So kaya nag-shift, kung mapapansin nyo, or siguro sa ating mga nag-oopisina na at nangangasiwa ng mga opisina, ang mga photocopying machine ngayon, instead na binibili, rinirentahan. O kumbaga, pag-aari pa rin siya ng manufacturer, binabayaran lang natin yung gamit. In that case, ang nagme-maintain yung manufacturer. No? So, yun ang isang example. At tinatry gamitin naman sa plastics. I can skip this. No? So, sige, briefly lang, ano ang principles ng circular economy. Gusto natin sa pag-design pa lang, iniisip na kung paano siya ma-recycle para konting basura lang ang makukuha at the end. And then dapat diverse yung use nung gagamitin na parte dun sa produkto. Of course, we want to use renewable energy. We think in systems. And then we consider waste as food, no, and as materials ulit. Yan. Application to the local setting, ito yung mga solutions, kumbaga, given this situation, ano yung solutions? So kailangan nating improve ang waste management infrastructure. Yung formal and informal collection, by the way, malaki ang nako-contribute ng informal, yung nangangalakal, no? Pero hindi sila nasasama sa usapan ng basura. In fact, sa maraming lugar sila ay illegal, sila ay considered illegal, pero malaki ang nakukuha nila na ang contribution nila, no, para sa ma-recycle ang plastic at iba pang recyclable. And then of course yung recycling infrastructure kailangang i-improve, no, bigyan ng incentives. Napakaliit ng industriya na ito. Wala masyadong incentive para mag-recycle, walang gamit, walang merkado para sa recycled products. And then lalong-lalo na for low value plastics. Yun talaga yung challenge, no? Challenge din magkolekta ng low value plastic dahil ang gaan-gaan. Challenge din na tayo ay isang archipelago, tayo ay magkakalayo. So yung logistics, so yung transportation ay isang challenge. We have to redesign, no, plastic packaging. We need to close the loop. Pangatlo, napaka-importante ng pagkuha ng datos sa mga local government unit, yung nangangasiwa ng mga solid waste management. Dapat maayos ang pagkolekta ng data. Dahil dito natin makikita yung mamomonitor, nag-i-improve ba ang ating pangangasiwa ng basura. Kailangan nating makita saan nagli-leak ang plastic. No, may mga bagong tools ngayon na ginagamit para ma-identify at which part of the solid waste management value chain may leakage. Dun ba sa basurero, dun ba sa junk shop, sa recycling, sa disposal site, sa sorting. No, kasi it's only then with data that we can come up with interventions. And then pang-apat, we want to hold corporations, yung manufacturers ng plastic, responsible. So kaya may bagong batas din na nakahain, it's called Extended Producer Responsibility, na sila ay magbabayad ng a certain fee depende sa plastic packaging na linabas nila sa merkado para ito ay gamitin for the collection at recycling, no? Para may pera tayo na pangpondo para sa pag-recycle ng kolekta at recycle ng plastics. And finally, also to improve our wastewater treatment infrastructure. Napakalaking bahagi pa ng ating bansa ang hindi connected to walang treatment ng wastewater, no? Either decentralized or centralized, kulang na kulang pa. So kaya maraming microplastics galing sa wastewater. So this is my last slide. Nagkamali pala ako sa timer, hindi ko alam, parang lampas-lampas na. Maraming salamat po for your attention. Thank you. Yan.
Maraming salamat, Dr. Tonette, para sa napaka-informative na presentation nyo about sa status ng plastic usage, plastic waste management dito sa Philippines. And tama kayo, malaki pang isang challenge talaga yung pagmamanage ng plastic, at malaki yung problema natin about sa pollution sa mga water bodies natin. Okay, so sa mga participants po natin, kung meron na kayong mga tanong about sa diniscuss ni Dr. Tonette Tanchuling, maaari nyo pong i-type yan dito sa ating chat box sa Zoom or sa comment section sa Facebook Live natin. Okay, and sasagutin po namin ang inyong mga comments and questions sa dulo po after ng ating second presentation. Doon din po namin i-share yung link para sa feedback form para din makuha nyo ang inyong e-certificates. At magkakaroon din po tayo ng photo session towards the end of this CE Webtalk. So muli, thank you, Ma'am Tonette. Standby lang po muna kayo. So dumako na po tayo sa ating second and last lecture talk ngayong hapon. So tatawagin ko po ulit si Engineer Ludi para ipakilala ang ating second speaker.
Okay, salamat ulit, Leia. So ang ikalawa po nating speaker, isa po siyang environmental planner, isang engineer. No, siya po ay nagtapos ng candidate po siya ng Master in Engineering, Environmental Engineering sa Xavier University at Ateneo de Cagayan. So, siya po ay kasalukuyang faculty member ng Civil Engineering Department sa Xavier University, Ateneo de Cagayan. Siya rin po ay Program Coordinator ng Disaster Risk, Environment and Management ng Xavier U Engineering Resource. Kanya pong membership ay sa PIES, PIEP, PhilAS, EAST, and TSSP. Ang awards recognition po niya, participant po siya ng 2022 IASST Forum sa Japan, Suzuka, Japan, NAST Future Science Leaders. Siya rin po ay nakakuha ng second place coach sa National Resilience Council ng Young Leaders for Resilience Program Leaders Forum 2019. Ang mga research projects po niya, a research interest, vulnerability, and impact analysis in the Philippines, WebGrid, Geospatial Risk Database for COVID-19, National Resilience Council, GIS and HEVR mapping of renewable energy sources, Mindanao Clean Energy Living Laboratories, at influence of habitat and climate variables on dengue vectors in CDO, DOST. So tawagin na po natin si Engineer Jefferson VALLENTE Jr.
Hello, good afternoon po sa lahat. Thank you po, Engineer Ludi, for the kind introduction po. So let me share my screen first. Oh, wait, I'll present. So magandang hapon po sa lahat. I'm Jefferson Ramos VALLENTE Jr. from Cagayan de Oro. So I think I'm so far the only speaker from Mindanao sharing our learnings and also our advocacy related to conservation and reforestation. So I'll be talking a little different from what we used to practice in civil engineering. No? Kalimitan po, it's mostly on infrastructure o di naman po kaya on human induced na mga activities. We'll talk for something naman po na related to the environment, especially on conservation and reforestation. So when we talk of these two terms, I want to talk also some issues related to this one, kung bakit natin kailangan ng conservation and reforestation. So the study that I'll be focusing po will focus on Mindanao, no? Especially that we have different environmental problems that also is related to the social and economic regimes. No? Mindanao is actually the source of many things. No? Most of the products that you're enjoying in Manila might be from Mindanao. One of which is banana. No? So we are quite fond of eating bananas, no? Especially sa nagdadayat. Maraming gustong kumain ng banana. Banana industry is really big in Mindanao. No? However, there are some issues associated to it. No? Even though there are investments, no? Apart from banana, there's also for palm oil. And this sometimes encroach our protected areas. No? There's also the struggle of banana plantation or owners, no? For the past, especially with the arrival of COVID-19. And there are also issues due to climate where most of these areas na rich in agriculture are also threatened by climate change. No? Specifically, or just recently, when Odette occurred in Mindanao or passed through Mindanao. Now, the profile of Mindanao is really in agriculture. In fact, in these maps shown here, we see the different crops produced in Mindanao. No? Baka magtanong kayo, bakit crops yung pinag-uusapan if reforestation at conservation? No? Well, merge these two concepts later and how we see why governance is quite important in this aspect. So in Mindanao, we actually produce much of seaweeds, tuna. No, your canned tuna is from Mindanao, most of them. No, you also have banana, you also have palm oil, and also pineapple. No? These products actually are from these regions. No? As you can see in this map, those areas na medyo dark brown, ito yung mga areas kung saan most of these crops are from. No? But incidentally, in these regions also, where these crops are produced or planted, these are also the regions where poverty occurs. No? If we talk about Zamboanga, if we talk about Compostela Valley or Davao de Oro, and even if we talk about Bukidnon, which is the food basket of Mindanao. In fact, banana production in Mindanao, which accounts for 99% of the Cavendish product in the country, is now valued at 212 billion pesos. No? If you could just imagine that value, if you turn that into social programs, no, para matulungan ang mga residents, no, pwede sana. And in our just recently, we made a trip in Davao de Oro to check how far the banana plantations are reaching. No? This is January of 2022. You see how much it has encroached much of our agricultural areas. And where most forests have been planted for the past 100 years, we've already converted it for banana plantations, no? As can be seen here. No? In fact, if you travel across the central part of Davao de Oro, there is a banana highway, no? From end to end, puro banana. And as far as your eyes can see, at the foot of the mountains, there is banana. Okay? No? Even if you think of itong ways of harvesting banana, they have a unique system. No? If we have the longest zip line in Bohol, I think the zip line for banana might be longer in Mindanao. No? They have this system of collecting banana because production is really high. This becomes an issue in some cases because our efforts for forest conservation and reforestation is sometimes put aside because of our ambitions for bigger economic gains, no? But we see that the economic gains, most of the time, are only reserved or enjoyed by those who are in power. We see here that there are two ways of really solving this problem: forest conservation and reforestation. No? But there are different ways of doing it. When we say conservation, it is the practice of planting and maintaining forested areas. No? This means that we need to map out those areas covered by forest or do an account of where these forest areas were before and conserve them, no? Especially the biodiversity of the area. No? In most cases, when we do reforestation or conservation, we think of planting trees that are very common. For example, you see Nara, or perhaps you see itong what do we call this? There's another version of trees that we plant mostly in this zones, no, but they are not intended or they are not endemic in that zone. So you may be able to change the diversity because of that action. Reforestation is also a very common activity, no? But this is treatment used to reestablish forest cover. And sometimes we don't know where to plant this forest, no? Yung program ng gobyerno before was mostly on highways. No? There are also programs to protect for landslide, no? But where really should we plant if we are to achieve something? No? In this talk, I'll cover how you can choose areas for reforestation and conservation if you're trying to solve an overarching problem, which is climate change. We can also focus on how to prevent flooding just by doing conservation and reforestation. And our case study will be Agusan River Basin. Okay? Agusan River Basin is the third largest basin in the Philippines, and it's registered in Ramsar, having one of the only wetlands in the world that is landlocked. No? Most of the wetlands that are being studied worldwide, nasa coast. Ito iba, nasa gitna. And there's history behind it, no? And we only might have heard of Agusan Marsh before, if we think about Lolong, the big crocodile, no? But that was only, that is a testament of how biodiverse the area is, no? Which requires protection. Now, Agusan River Basin is quite unique in terms of its environmental characteristics. If you talk about yearly rainfall rather, most rainfall comes from the Pacific. No? So this is the area in the map where you see the white portion, that's the northeast portion of the island. And the rainfall decreases as it approaches the eastern section. And why is that? This section have tall mountains. No? One mountain even here is full of gold, no? As the story goes. No? We have large mining sites also in this basin, which also threatens the reforestation and conservation efforts. No? If we talk about the annual changes, no, by December, January, and February, we have the northeast monsoon. December, January, February, we will have another wet part, but mostly this is due to the moisture from the Pacific. If there's no air pulling this one or pushing this one, then there is no moisture. No. The average yearly rainfall in the area is quite substantial, no? And strong rain on the slopes in the eastern side of the basin, eastern dito na part, may cause erosion and landslide. And these areas also are where mining sites are. So you see the different intersections of the problems in these zones. When we talk about the issue of climate change, there are two things that we really need to account, no, and how this will affect our efforts. First is that there is a change in temperature. We see that through time, no, as can be seen in this map, these portions will get warmer, no, in these zones, no, and you see Agusan River Basin is quite affected. No? It will get warmer. But how about rainfall? Rainfall will keep on decreasing towards the future. When we say decrease, it doesn't mean that the number of rain events will just decrease. No, it may intensify a certain rain event. No, and a testament to that is Odette. That's the one of the destructive typhoons crossing this region in Surigao del Sur and Agusan del Norte. And when we intersect climate change with our efforts in reforestation, normally we say that we will plant more trees. No? Pero saan? That's another question that we want to focus. No? If we see some predictions from Pag-asa kung kailan naman pwedeng uulan or gaano ka taas ang ulan na pwedeng i-experience ng isang lugar, when we talk about dry season, really in the future, these regions will dry down. No? You see a reduction of moisture, 21% and 26%. These are large fluctuations. No? What will happen is that the banana industry will be really affected. It will become drier. The palm oil production will also be affected because of this. And if we talk about the wet season, there is an increase of about 7% in this southern part and negative 3% in the northern part. Overall, we see that really it's a drier event. No? And this event of extreme events of 150 mm per day, instead of once in 15 years, it now becomes 1 in 7.5 years. No? So we really see that the events will increase in the future. And even an extreme event of 200 mm per day, now once in 30 years, in the future will be once in 1.2 years, meaning it will become very frequent. In fact, tropical cyclone Pablo was 180 mm per day and Agaton was 250 mm per day. We already exceeded what was predicted in the past. No? Now, the reasons for this one, and this will also guide us in choosing sites for reforestation, is that mountains are cold. No? Lower part at the average maximum temperature of 31 to 32.6 degrees centigrade. And this prediction from Pag-asa says that per year, we will have more events of above 35 degrees centigrade. No? In 1970s, it may be 4 or 11 in these provinces, but in the future, almost half of the year will be dry. No? And you could think about how will this impact the banana industry. But for me, I'm not just concerned more in the banana industry because it may just affect those who are in power or those who are investing in banana industry. But how about the food production? How about the way that we live with this warmer situation? No? That's another issue that intersects with this one. Now, if we talk about observations done in the area, these are measurements in the river and also in the rain in this region, specifically Agusan River Basin, and how this will affect our decisions. This data are mostly used for early warning systems. Many stations have been installed, but there are some problems because most of these gauges are offline most of the time, especially when there is an interruption. Now, there are some limitations to this analysis, that there are no flow rates, no stations in higher areas. But again, this tells us a different story of how the basin can actually serve as a buffer and a testament that when we do reforestation and conservation, we can solve the issue of flooding. So during the, this was the Pablo event in 2012, there was a record of rainfall, and you can see where the rainfalls were occurring, or where it was heavier compared to other parts. Itong map na to shows the plot using satellite data, and we see areas in maroon are where most of the rainfall fell. Okay, take note of this because these are our hotspots later. Even if we create a more historical approach, this is a daily rainfall in that zone. You can see this southern portion was really impacted. This was the reason why there was a flood in Moncayo, and then this portion also in Agusan del Norte. So this is that portion in the map. So this satellite data is quite available, easily accessible, and can be used for analysis. Now, if we plot it on the ground and see how this affects the different fluctuations in the river, we see that during that event, even in Agaton, when there was rain upstream, most of it was absorbed by the marsh. You can see here, this is the marsh. This is the upstream part of the river, and we see there is a decrease in the level of water. And why is that? Because the marsh acts as a buffer or like a sponge. Okay, and this is the testament that really reforestation and conservation works. Maybe that God placed the Agusan Marsh there to really prevent people in Butuan or Bayugan from getting flooded. And even if we see the downstream parts of the river, we see a decrease or gradual decrease because of the contribution of the marsh. Apart from that, this can be represented in a concept, or we call in this study as the Agusan Marsh conceptual model. That in case of extreme rainfall, we see from observations that in the southern portion, we have large rains, and primarily that is because the land cover in these zones, they mostly don't have forests, and actually most of them are planted with banana. And in this case, some of the rain from the northern portion actually backs or come back into the Agusan Marsh. This is primarily because of elevation. Agusan Marsh is lower compared to Esperanza, so some of the waters come back. And in the longer run, this will discharge when there is a decrease of flow in the southern portion. And when you have an area that does this, that calls for conservation, that calls for reforestation. Instead of focusing 200 billion of profit in a certain product or crop, why not try to focus on conserving the Agusan Marsh. No? This becomes another issue because forest cover is thinning in these zones. No? This is a map showing the comparison of forest cover in the basin. This is a map from DENR and another map from satellite data. No? We see that itong mga zones na yellow, wala na yung forest. No? And if we even map a more recent version, this is in 2020, no? Areas in pink are those that were cut out, mga deforestation zones, and even those zones na we converted for banana or palm oil. And Agusan Marsh is even affected. No? This is how the map of Agusan Marsh is plotted, no? Using the protected zone. However, we see that there are parts in the river mismo, no? Itong parts na to na are thinning, no? And one contributory reason to that is that palm oil plantations are expanding quite aggressively in these regions. And even in the southern portion, the water contributing to the marsh is affected because banana plantations are still existing. If we talk about numbers, we have the summary of how the forest cover has been affected, no, for the past years. But really, we see that there is 20% of the basin that is affected. These areas have thinning forest cover. And these areas here, areas between rivers and mountains in Agusan del Sur has lost most. No? But be reminded that these problems will be compared later. We see here another data from forest cover or global forest cover. No? The 2000 cover area are larger than previous slides. No? But most notably, there is loss in these portions also, no? As we are comparing here different data sets. So satellite data does not discriminate between forest and tree plantations. This is another limitation in this analysis. However, we see it is conclusive that there is really thinning of the forest cover, whether it is used for agriculture, whether it is used by or were damaged by recent catastrophic events. And also that mining operations are existing in these areas. Okay, there is the protected zone. This is the protection buffer in Agusan Marsh. But you will notice that there are still permits given for mining operation within the production agriculture and within the protection buffer. So they are existing. And even if you check from the plans of the local government, if you might ask, if you have this results, were you able to present this in the local government? The answer is yes. No, we've presented this in the mayor's office, DENR, and even the province of Davao de Oro, which was at that time as Compostela Valley. So exploration permits, though are small, are existing, and large areas are claimed for mining or quarrying. No? Many of these areas are also protected areas. So this also challenges our notion that is there really that teeth in the law when we say there is protected area, okay? And how this will also challenge our efforts na you keep on planting, but the government or some those in power are using it for economic needs. Okay, so as a conclusion, we can see that though data is difficult, but forest loss is really observed. No? And Agusan Marsh has very variable cover, but lost 29% of the high density vegetation, which is mostly forest, from 1995 to 2013. No? And production forest between river and protected highlands is converted to industrial, or shall we say agriculture, because these are plantations. No? It's unlike your usual agricultural activity where you plant for food. No, these are planted for to be sold outside the country. And this change is planned to be continued, and the area actually in use by mining is limited. Compostela Valley promotes responsible mining for economic development and aims to increase in the mining area to 20% of the province in 2027. Still, that number is significant. And so if we say, how then can we protect these areas? No? I'll just brush through the slides. No? These areas will get flooded in the future. And for me, these are areas or hotspots for forest cover. No? And if we analyze it in a map, no, I'll just skip this part. We see that the marsh acts as a sink, but we see that large portions of the upstream portion of the marsh actually supplies the inflow, and most of it has high siltation. And guess what? That siltation is due to thinning forest covers. We can see here, these are hotspots for reforestation and conservation, no? But again, there are issues whether to really push for it or not, especially in this part. This is in Moncayo, where most of the areas that would have helped us to protect from future floods are already planted with banana. Some are even converted back to palm oil, and mostly if you come here, no, you can't see areas planted for food production. And we can't eat banana every day naman, siguro, no? We need variety in our diet. So maybe some things need to be done, no? Maybe we can introduce sustainable agriculture with reforestation efforts in these areas. This is the same with the area of Talapugo. No? There are parts in the north that are threatened. No? These areas in red are reported to have lost its forest cover for the past 12 years. No? And if we think about overall conclusions, no, we know that climate change will increase in the future. We see a reduction in moisture to 20%. And then the observed land cover change makes the situation worse, no? Because we're thinning out our forest. On the other hand, increasing awareness, early warning systems, and coping capacity limits the number of casualties if we talk about dangerous weather events, no? And on the long run, events are predicted to become so frequent and intense. And this could be partly solved if we really focus our attention, our efforts for conservation, reforestation, and sustainable agriculture initiatives. That's all for my presentation. Thank you.
Maraming salamat, Engineer Jeff, para sa iyong presentation about reforestation and conservation. Okay, so tungo na po tayo sa ating open forum session. So tatawagin ko po ang aking co-moderator ngayong hapon, si Engineer Ludi. Pati na rin po yung first speaker natin kanina, si Dr. TONETTE TANCHULING. So ngayong hapon, very interesting yung topics natin about the environment. So yung una about sa plastic waste management, and pangalawa about sa forest naman po. So sa mga participants natin, kung may questions kayo, feel free to type them sa ating chat box at comment section sa Facebook Live. Okay? So habang naghihintay, sige. So ako na lang siguro muna ang unang magtatanong, magko-comment, no, kay Engineer Jeff siguro po, no. Kasi na-mention nyo yung about sa conservation and yung Philippines, very blessed tayo, no, sa ating rich biodiversity at large forest cover. Paano kaya mababalance yung conservation at yung need natin for development? May policy or concrete action po ba tayong pwedeng masuggest or magawa ng government para dyan?
Thank you, Ma'am Leia. No? I think the past administrations have really made an effort in improving our forest covers. No? But I think one thing that hasn't really been focused on is working with the indigenous people, especially in the study areas that I've talked. No? these regions kasi they have been forests, no, for quite a time when they were protected by indigenous people. But through time, I think they are also being threatened, and one reason for that is that they are sent somewhere, or they are affected by disasters, no? So if we work with indigenous people in doing the conservation and reforestation efforts, kasi sila yung mas may knowledge, no? Even me, I don't consider myself yet really at the expert level, no? I would rather ask an IP to help me choose which area should be plant if this was the call, or if this was the history of the land, no? So I think working with them would be beneficial. But I'm talking in the areas that I've worked so far, no? In Agusan River Basin, in Bukidnon, and even in Misamis Oriental.
Thank you, Engineer Jeff. Magaling ang sagot po yung parang include din, no, sa system natin yung indigenous people. Okay, so may question po tayo. Siguro for both speakers, no? Pwede po kayong sumagot dito. The question is, how has the country addressed environmental issues so far? Have we improved over the last years or not? So unahin natin kay Dr. Tonette.
Yeah, parang mahirap yun na tanong. Pero I'll try my best at I hope you don't mind. Tungkol lang po sa basura siguro ang mako-cover ko. Siguro for waste, water quality rin siguro. I'll try my best, no? Kung may improvement, meron naman. Hindi naman siya static. Kunwari sa usapin ng let's say basura or plastic waste, yung mga sinasabi ko pong mga bills na nakasalang sa Congress or sa Senado, katulad nung pag phase out ng single-use plastic, tapos magta-try tayo ng extended producer's responsibility, na yun nga, pananagutin natin kumbaga ang gagawin natin silang accountable or magbayad sila, i-finance, no, ang recycling, ang pag-recycle ng mga plastics na nailalabas nila. So in that case, maganda yon. Maganda rin ang involvement ng civil society. Malaki ang contribution ng civil society sa environmental management, no? Kunwari sa basura, siguro narinig nyo na yung efforts ng yung ano nga yun, Lea, Mrs. Tindahan? Ano?
Mrs. Walastik po. Aling
Mrs.
tindera.
Walastik, Aling tindera. Yung ipapalit mo ang plastic mo, no, for some commodities, tapos active din ang corporations like Nestle, no, yung kanilang plastic neutrality program na may objective sila na lahat na nailabas nilang plastic sa market dapat ma-recover. So may mga efforts, let's say yung mga eco bricks, hindi ko pala po nasama yon, no, kasi nung konting-konti pa lang sila kung titingnan natin yung buong picture, pero may mga ganun ng efforts, so sa private sector din. So ganun pa man, siguro kulang yung enforcement, I would say, lalo na sa basura. Let's start with RA 9003. Di ba 21 years na siya na in-enact. Ngayon ko lang nabasa, well, may mga press release ang DNR na nagsara na daw ang, kasi for a long time, until siguro before sinara, ang dami nating open dump sites, no? So ganun din sa ibang batas, maraming kailangang i-improve, lalo na sa enforcement. Yun po ang aking masasabi. And siguro related din sa good governance, lalo na sa good governance ng local government, kasi ang basura ay sa pangangasiwa ng local government, na kunwari in-emphasize ko kanina, it starts with good data collection. Lahat yon, kahit siguro yung in-explain ni Engineer Jeff, no? Lahat ng ginagawa natin kung walang maayos na data, walang information, parang lahat press release. So, dun tayo sa yung kung pipili tayo ng gobyerno, yung nagpapahalaga sa data. Kasi yan ang basis ng transparency. Siguro isipin nyo, basura lang yan. Pero napaka-importante po magtala. No? Ilan ba talaga ang tinatapon? Kasi hindi po kayo maniniwala, hindi lahat ng LGU may ganyang available yung ganyang data. So yun lang po. Yun ang aking Thank you.
Thank you, Ma'am Tonette. Si Engineer Jeff naman.
Yes po. To add to that, no, since it's more of the national efforts on environmental issues, no, laws are there, no. I think Dr. Net would agree. Maraming laws, no, maraming department orders that circulars on a specific environmental issue, and the problem really boils down to who will enforce these laws, no. Marami siya. Even if you know or you don't know, there is a law, RA 10176, that requires every able-bodied citizen above 12 years old to plant a tree a year, no? 1 tree a year. No? But do we have the database to say that ilan ba yung natanim mo in that year? No? Only few LGUs have this initiative that every birthday mo, you need to plant and show a certification. No? Only a few of that, because enforcement is really a problem. No? And all the more with the devolution now, no, all or almost all, no, of the national activities or programs shall be devolved to the local government. No? So sa Bisaya pa, bunog na ang local government to do this. No? Parang everything is on their plate now, and these issues will become rampant or more rampant because enforcement is missing. And local governments are doing it, but not all have the same capacity. Not all have the same funds, no, to do this stuff. And everything in the law cannot be implemented if that's the case.
Tama po. Thank you, Engineer Jeff. No, we have good laws, no, sa Philippines, very comprehensive, the RA 9003 and sa conservation. It's just a matter of implementation and strengthening the capacity of our local government units, national government, pati mga barangay din. So for the next question, si Engineer Ludi po.
Okay, second question. How do we balance waste versus conservation? We use paper instead of plastic, but we cut trees to produce paper. So pareho din siguro kayong sasagot, Dr. Net and Engineer Jeff.
Yeah, ako na lang muna. Kaya nga yung kunwari yung sa pag-phase out ng packaging, so dapat careful din yung pag-identify ng alternatives. Kasi alam natin na hindi lang tama yan, no? You cut trees for paper. May iba pang implications dahil mas mabigat siya. Pwede rin you'll produce more greenhouse gases. You have more emissions dahil sa transportation, dahil sa weight, no? So pagpili ng alternatives, dapat tinitingnan, siguro gagamit ng life cycle assessment para makita talaga yung kabuuan na impacts. So right now hindi naman automatic na ina-advocate na palitan ng papel ang plastic. And in fact, hindi lahat ng uses ng plastic kayang palitan ng paper. So, ang paper nababasa. So, depende sa use. Actually, ang mas ina-advocate, if you can help it, sa totoo lang sa grocery, no, pwede naman tayong magdala ng sarili nating bag na reusable. So hindi lang naman yun yung kumbaga hindi naman dichotomized yung either or, no, paper or plastic. So siguro pag yun lang ang masasabi ko, pagpili ng alternatives, titingnan yung kabuuang impacts from extraction ng material. Ang sinasabi ko nga palagi ang papel hindi nyo lang nakikita sa ilog kasi lumubog na. No, nababasa, mabigat, nasa ilalim na siya ng riverbed. Pero ganun, talagang kailangan maayos din ang pag-manage ng basura. Yeah, thank you.
So I agree to what Dr. Net was telling earlier. No? It's more of the consensus way of using or purchasing goods. No? Like instead of asking for a plastic bag, why not use your own, no? An eco bag, or perhaps not use at all, no? Kung kaya mo namang dalhin na bitbitin mo na lang ang iyong mga binili, no? So it boils down to our individual actions. Kasi if we, for example, we tend to use this product most of the time, but if there's a common effort among Filipinos not to advocate or buy this product because it's using too much plastic, no? Or perhaps if it's affecting our forest, no? Because we're advocating or using it in a daily basis, no? I think that will hurt them and perhaps help us in conservation and reforestation. And if you're doing it as a discernment every day, now what should you do? I think it really boils down to your values, no? How do you decide on this stuff and which one to use na mas makakatulong ka sa environment?
Thank you po sa mga sagot nyo. At this point,
Salamat.
tawagin ko rin po, sasamahan tayo dito sa open forum natin, ang representative ng Junior Philippine Institute of Civil Engineers, lungsod ng Maynila, chapter, si Carlene Andalut, para makuha naman ang kanyang reaction at comment dito. Oh, hi Carlene, nakamute ka.
And good afternoon po ulit. First of all po, we would like to thank you all po sa speakers and of course sa CE Forlene po for organizing this very helpful web talks po. Lalo na po sa aming mga CE students right now kasi po syempre masyado na kami minsan lubog sa mga calculations and we sometimes forget na po yung mismong application kung saan namin talaga magagamit yung mga needed calculations na yun. Kumbaga yung parang pinaka-purpose po ng engineering. Ayun po. Dun po sa, I have a question lang po dun sa plastic bottles po. Since na-mention na po kanina yung sa eco blocks po ba yun? Or eco bricks, ganun po. Hindi ko po tanda yung tawag. But yun po. Meron na po ba tayong parang mga structures na natayo gamit yung ganun po? Since di ba po, pasok siya dun sa circular economy na sinabi po kanina, wherein ma-recycle po natin yung plastics pag sinama siya sa concrete.
Yes, meron ng maliliit na structures like ang alam ko if you visit, maganda mag-visit on green ants. They welcome ants, ANTZ. Yung office nila mismo, yung wall. Tama ba ako, Leia? Baka mas alam to ni Leia. Yung office nila mismo is made of the eco bricks that they produced. So that's in Bulacan. Pero I know they're expanding all over. So yes, to answer your questions, kung meron na. Ang alam ko lang, ang latest ay they need more tests. Yung properties ng kanilang structural members para malabas talaga sa merkado, and yun yung focus ng efforts ngayon to be able to have those tests done.
Ayan po. Thank you po. Follow up lang po dun. Ano po ba yung medyo pinagkaiba niya dun sa normal nating ginagamit in terms po dun sa cost and yun nga po cost na lang po since nasabi na po yung sa strength.
Leia, mas alam yata nila. Parang mas mahal ba? If we're talking about green ants. Pero I'll try to answer and then tutulungan ako ni Leia. In terms of buying the material, baka may ibang alam ko mas mahal, pero if we take into consideration the impacts, like yung na-replace niya na semento na gagamitin, baka mas advantageous. Yung environmental impacts of extraction, and of course yung impacts ng, kasi especially gumagamit sila ng low value plastics and sachets na mahirap talagang i-utilize. Leia, tama ba ang sagot ko? I'm not so confident with that answer.
Pero yung green ants, marami na rin silang partnership with corporations like Ayala. So may mga paved mga bricks, no, yung mga pavements, walls, schools din. And may mga studies na rin about yan, life cycle analysis, tsaka cost benefit analysis. Aside from yung investment, kasi titingnan din yung cost, no, na divert mo yung plastics, and mas mahaba daw yung useful life ng mga materials nila.
Ma'am Leia and Dr. TONETTE, to add kasi I worked with green ants before. No? I was their partner in Cagayan de Oro.
Yan pala, official statement.
I helped them build their first recycling plant in Cagayan de Oro. So due to that, the material is costly compared to regular brick, but it's stronger. Okay, and the gains, like especially if you're talking about local government efforts, no, the gains in recycling and disposing of the product is much higher compared to using the conventional ones. Kasi if you dispose this low value plastics, it's better to use them for eco brick production. So they even partner with student organizations if you want. No, they can do seminars and workshops for you, and even if you collect the plastics yourselves, they can help you build anything that you want, no? Kung student level na projects, pwede. Like parang waiting shed, kasi they have all the parts, no? From the column, though they're experimental pa yung column, pero mostly bricks. Tsaka yung bricks nila for the flooring.
Ayan, thank you so much po. That was very helpful po sa amin, sobra po. And ayan po, mas nabuksan po yung ano namin, view namin sa ganun instead of yung sa super traditional and such po. Ang next, pwede pa po bang magtanong?
Sure, sige, go lang.
Ayan po. Yung sa isa naman po, yung sa talk po ni Engineer Jeff po. Yun din po yung halos tanong kanina, yung sa conservation po. Bale, marami po kasi ngayong projects dito sa may amin, sa Quezon Province, na ano po, about sa, di ba sa construction po ng mga factories, ganun po. Kasi may itatayo na po at ang mga factories dito. Pag po ba nagtayo ng ganun, our engineers or kung sino man po yung involved doon, required na palitan yung mga sisirain nilang mga, mga ika-cut down na trees po?
Actually, you need to talk, kung ganong case, no, you need to talk sa local government. Kasi yung zoning ng area na yon will dictate kung, for example, if it is for agriculture, how much of it should be covered with forest. No, so if ever you construct a factory, may laws din yung local government how much should be retained for forest cover. Okay, especially kung large areas, no? And if you have or the company that's using it will really release fumes, no? For example, mayroon silang stock na gagamit ng fuel, no? And if the local government has laws for parang babayaran mo yung waste na tinapon mo by planting forest, so pwede din ganun, no? But most of the existing laws that we have, for example, merong ganitong puno na nandyan na sa area, no? If these are endemic species, there is protection for them, no? Except for mahogany or yung Gimelina, mostly walang protection for them, no? You just need to ask permit to cut them, no? So yun yung common na mga interventions at what the local government is doing.
Ayan po, thank you po. Yun lang po yung questions namin.
Thank you din, Carlene, para sa comments at sa questions. Okay, I believe may question pa tayo mula sa Facebook at sa Zoom. Okay, so itong question po, siguro addressed kay Engineer Jeff. So many foreign companies have come and have leased or rented out areas of the IPs for their agricultural production. So is this advantageous to us Filipinos?
Okay. In terms of whether it is advantageous, it depends on the case, no? But most of these partnerships that the foreign nationals are doing really damages the environment. Kasi after the contract, they just leave, no? That's the common thing that they do. And most of them have no heart to really retain what was there before. For example, I can't mention really the product, no, but in Bukidnon there is this large plantation, and since time immemorial, no, it has been planted with that plant, and this has caused disadvantageous effects to us, no. Not to mention just flood, but there's also landslide. Okay, so really disadvantageous if that's the case, no.
Thank you, Engineer Jeff. So tama po kayo, no? Dapat hindi rin natin exploit yung mga IP lands natin. And due to the interest of time, yun na po yata ang ating last question. So, Engineer Ludi.
Ikagawad natin, yes. So ngayon, at this point, ikagawad na natin yung ating Certificate of Appreciation kay Dr. Net at kay Engineer Jeffrey. So basahin ko lang, no? Lugaw ng Kaalaman, Civil Engineering Web Talks, Certificate of Appreciation is presented to Dr. Maria Antonia and TANCHULING for sharing her time and expertise in the Civil Engineering Web Talk number 5. Puso man ay masaktan, wag lang ang kalikasan. Environmental Waste Management. So given on 12th of February 2022 through Zoom. So signed by Dr. Andres Winston Oreta, convener of CE for Lenny, and Engineer Emmanuel Llanes, coordinator of Engineers for Lenny.
Thank you.
Thank you rin, Dr. Tonette. So for Engineer Jeff, okay, again, Lugaw ng Kaalaman, Civil Engineering Web Talks, Certificate of Appreciation is presented to Environmental Planner, Engineer Jefferson VALLENTE Jr. for sharing his time and expertise in the Civil Engineering Web Talk number 5, Puso man ay masaktan, wag lang ang kalikasan, Conservation and Reforestation, given this 12th of February 2022 through Zoom. Again, signed by Dr. Andres Winston Oreta and Engineer Emmanuel Llanes.
Thank you po, everyone.
Okay, maraming salamat po kay Dr. Tonette Tanchuling and kay Engineer Jefferson VALLENTE Jr. Bigyan po natin sa virtual claps. Okay, ayan po. Again, thank you sa lahat. So dadako na po tayo sa closing part na ating program.
Engineer Leia, meron pa Certificate of Recognition naman for the Junior PIs. Okay, ito. Certificate of Recognition is given to Junior Philippine Institute of Civil Engineers, Lungsod ng Maynila, for actively promoting and supporting the Civil Engineering Web Talk number 5. Okay, so signed by Dr. Andres Winston Oreta and Engineer Emmanuel Llanes. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you sa Junior PIC at sa pag-support ng ating CE. Webtalk simula nung umpisa hanggang matapos to ating series. Siguro to synthesize po, no, yung issue natin sa plastics at plastic pollution and forest loss ay ilan lang sa mga alarming environmental issues na kinakaharap ng Philippines. And dapat hindi natin tinitake for granted yung paggamit ng plastic, pagtapon ng plastic, and yung ating forest. So those in power should be concerned and should not exploit yung gantong aspeto ng ating environment. Okay? So yung actually ang gobyerno ay parang kalikasan, kailangan nating ingatan at huwag pabayaan. Ang plastic, bagamat mahalaga sa ating kabuhayan, ay dapat pagtuunan ng pansin sa pinsala na dinudulot nito sa ating kapaligiran. Ang ating kalikasan ay dapat pangalagaan dahil ito ay nagbibigay ng buhay sa mamamayan. So kung i-relate natin yan sa current events natin, sa darating na eleksyon, pumili po tayo ng mga leader na tapat sa serbisyo sa bayan, hindi yung pansariling kapakinabangan ang isusulong, at dapat yung may tunay na pagmamahal sa ating bansa at sa ating kapaligiran. So pumili tayo ng tunay at hindi plastic para sa mahusay at matibay na pamahalaan. So nagpapasalamat po tayo sa ating mga speakers sa pagbabahagi ng kanilang kaalaman about sa ating kalikasan, sa ating mga organizers and supporters. Okay? So yung magpe-play po kami ng maigsing video tungkol sa ating isang message mula sa ating Vice President Leni Robredo. So panoorin po natin ito.
Naging malinaw sa amin, kapag kabataan ng katuwang, laging may maiaambag na bago. Buong-buo ibinibigay ang sarili at laging ibinubuhos ang lahat ng energy sa gawain. As civil engineers, malalim ang gagampanan ninyong tungkulin sa pagpanday ng mundong pinapangarap natin. Engineers find harmony in the moving parts and make sure that every component allows the organic whole to function and work well. You will not only plan, design, and oversee the construction of buildings and infrastructures. In doing so, you will reflect what we value, whom we care for, and what we dream of. You will shape the way we experience things, from roads, railways, and bridges, to harbors, dams, and irrigation systems. Your task is not simply to work on blueprints of metal, wood, and stone. The structures you build will form, in literal and metaphorical concrete, the very backbone of our nation. Ang mensahe ko ngayon sa inyo, pakinggan ang kwento ng mga komunidad. Magbabad sa pinagdaraanan nila. Bitbitin ang mga dalahing bitbit nila. Gawin ang kayang gawin para ibsan ang pagdurusa. And as you make each other's dreams and battles your own, remind one another of the good you are capable of doing. Empower and draw strength from this community and pave the way for even more to follow. Ngayon, higit kailanman, dahil sa inyo, mas lumalakas ang loob namin. Walang pandemyang hindi kayang sugpuin. Walang pagsubok na hindi kayang lampasan kung paiiralan natin ang malasakit at pagtutulungan. Kaya tuloy lang, padayon lang. Lagi ninyong tatandaan, hindi kayong mga bata lang. Mga Pilipino kayong may kakayahan at lakas na gumawa ng mas patas at mas makataong mundo para sa inyong mga sarili at para sa bawat Pilipino. Maraming salamat, mabuhay kayong lahat.